remind everyone, as Adam has reminded me, that if you do say anything, be sure and push your mic, turn the red button on so it can record everything as well. So, all right, this is our March 13th meeting. We're a little late, but that's okay. Thank you, Adam, for getting us in. And but we'll begin our meeting. And first thing we'll do, we'll take roll call. And I'll do that with beginning with Adam Lewis. Here. Linda Cash. David Lattimore.
Here.
Ken Webb.
Here.
Tom Cry.
Here.
Jonathan Job.
Here.
Kevin Brooks. Here. Cindy Slater.
Here.
Tim Lawson.
Here.
Brian Workman.
Here.
And David Hollins is not here. All right. Everyone should have received the minutes, and I hope have had a chance to review those. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Okay. Get that? Tom and the mayor seconded. All right, are there any discussions on the minutes? I did point out, I did see a couple of dates right at the beginning of the first paragraph. I think was the only, it was February 20th. We could correct that.
March 6th.
And then if you go down on that first page, there's still the reference to February 20th. If we could correct those. Does anyone else have any other comments?
That would have been correct at the March 6th meeting. We would have approved the minutes for the February 20th meeting. So acceptance of the meeting would be correct as it's written.
Okay, my fault. That is my fault and my error, so that doesn't have to be corrected. Any other comments on the minutes? All in favor of accepting, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are accepted. The next item is old business, and it shows to be none. So the next item is new business, which is we'll move into our public hearing number 2 regarding our 2025 urban growth boundary. So I would like to thank everyone that's here today, and I would like to ask if anyone would like to speak regarding or give comments regarding the boundary to the committee. Just raise your hand so I know. So, okay, I have one. Okay. What we would like to do is just state your name and sign in, and like you've done in the past. And so it's open, mic's open if you'd like to come up.
My name is Matt Bentley. I manage Bendabout Properties on the south end. And Chairman Mullinax, members, committee members, just had one question just to make sure. I understand that this proposed growth boundary is to help everyone in planning going forward. It's okay. And I think planning is essential for our community, for progress, and to make sure that we're, dotting I's and crossing T's. My question is there any scenario where if I am currently in the county, but I'm inside the growth boundary, where I as a private landowner would be forced to be included in the city limits.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd be happy to answer that, since I was in the state legislature when we passed the law that forbids forced annexation in the state of Tennessee. You have to, as a property owner, request it. We can no longer, it was proposed in 2015, I believe it passed in 2017, but it is now not possible for a city to force annex someone who does not choose to be a city resident. Hope that helps.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, thank you. One more question. So if, and I'm going to date back prior to that ruling, when the Spring Branch development of the industrial park was voted upon by both municipalities, there was a plan at the time to run sewer downstream, which is the most efficient and effective way to do it, down Spring Branch into Brimer Creek, not in the creek, but along the creek basin, down to Candy's Creek, and then back towards Cleveland to catch up or catch into one of the existing sewer lines. If we'd have done that at that time, my understanding was we could have been annexed because it ran through 500 acres of Bendabout. And I want to know, do I have the right as a private landowner, if I have a piece of property and I have a creek basin that runs through me, and then it diverts over to my adjacent landowners, and they want to do a high-density development, which requires city infrastructure, do I have the ability to stop that sewer line running through me in order to branch out to them? The industrial park was kind enough, the industrial park committee and board was kind enough to make some provisions for the McDonald community back then, which forced the pump of that sewer from that industrial park along I-75 up to the top of the hill at the Toyota dealership, where it could then go into gravity flow mode. I just want to make sure that that by including any portion of the farm, and there's several hundred acres of our farm and some neighbors that are part of this growth plan, I just want to make sure that I have the protection to say who can and who can't do what they want to do on my property. And I will go back to 1941, where the Plantation Petroleum Pipeline basically ran it down everybody's throat and went through our area. Colonial Pipeline did the same thing. So just want to make sure that by agreeing to any of these growth boundary, you know, and this is a 20-year, this is a guess for everyone, and it's important, I know, but I want to make sure that I'm not giving up any rights that I don't already have currently by agreeing to it.
So Matt, your example would be that and I'm thinking of an example that occurred. There was an annexation, non-contiguous annexation that occurred, and it was sewer was ran to the property along with Cleveland Utilities and parties involved, and it crossed county property, and it you know, we had to obtain easements to make that happen. So for the betterment of the community, you know, if we see that it's better now, it is not in that particular case. If parties did not agree, then and we still pursued, then you have the right to use eminent domain, and then we typically would come back to the county because it's in the county, it's not in the city, But there are avenues to do that. Is that what you're talking about?
It is, and Chairman, I'll give you an example. If there's a road in front of me, and let's say me and two of my cousins, we buy 30 acres of land on this side of the road, and from that road back that way, it's all Cleveland city limits. But we buy 30 acres. We split it 3 different ways, and I've got 10 acres. My cousin's got 10 acres. My other cousin's got 10 acres, and there's a branch that comes from the city property that's in the city limits, and it comes right in the middle of my property, my 10 acres, and it splits, and it goes to cousin 1 and cousin 2. And cousin 1 and cousin 2 both want to develop a piece of property at a higher density than the land will allow. So they wish to be annexed by the city so that they can have the services that the city provides. What are my rights to stop that coming through me to branch out to them?
I think in your case, it would hit the right of way and it would go down the right of way at the roadway. And we would probably use that. And, I don't know really in that case, Matt, that there is any way to stop them from doing what they want to do.
Okay.
Just like if you wanted it and they didn't want it.
Right.
But
You know,
there-
as long as the easements are obtained correctly and, you know, and depending on how we fund the sewer, all those different things, most people look at it as bettering the community, the property, and making it better for, in your particular case, you in the future, even though you're not doing it, but the parties on both sides want to do it.
Right.
Yes, and they may even participate in this theoretical discussion in purchasing and in helping pay for the sewer to develop their property.
But I don't have to let them come through my privately owned property. They have to stay on the right of way, and Cleveland Utilities has to figure out how to use the right of way to get to them.
I think you would have to get into, I think under what we're discussing today with this resolution, there would have to be still a contiguous annexation to the city.
Yeah, and I don't,
Would you turn on, I think you,
I believe I'm on.
Okay.
Yes, red light, green light. So while, even if that property was left out of the urban growth boundary, the scenario is the same. So I think what your original question was is how does this map impact it? So if your cousin's property was in it, but you were out, that scenario is the same to where eminent domain can be used for sewer. I don't think it is often used for sewer. And like you mentioned before, here locally, we will go above and beyond, including a fairly expensive pump to pump over a ridge to avoid going through a cheaper but more impactful process, if that makes sense. But the scenario would be the same with or without the growth boundary, because eminent domain is something that is not impacted by this for running sewer lines and things like that. Now, the type of density is impactful if your cousin wanted to be in it. That's the difference. But that gets into a scenario of one person's property rights over another and things like that, and it gets pretty philosophical. But you know, I think we locally have seen actions by the city or the utilities, whoever they may be, to avoid the painful and sometimes spend a little bit more money to not do that, is how I've seen it play out. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, Craig, but
you know, the different scenarios are, you know, how to stop someone, and I'm trying to think back over the years. Typically, you know, we work real hard to to bring people on board, and we typically do that. Now, in your particular case, let's just say the property was a deep property and you had the drainage going through your property, and we had to talk to you about extending it across your property, then that's where we would listen to everyone and have to make a decision for the good of the whole.
Yeah, right. So that's 2-1, me against two cousins. And I understand, and listen, I trust you and I trust you, but we're talking about a 20-year plan, right?
Yes.
And so I think just having this knowledge, and Rob, you're saying, I think we would do this, and, Chairman Mullinax, I think this is the steps we would take. I think given this knowledge, I think what I would like to do before the map is voted on is exclude any of Bendabout from my map, just because of that scenario. And it's not that I don't trust the entities or the people that are currently sitting in the position of power, but, I may not be here to protect the farm 10, 20 years from now. You may not be here to protect the farm and what I'm asking to do. So,
And yeah, and that's a perfectly valid request, and it's a slight change. I will say that even under the previous growth boundary where all of Bendabout was out, that use of eminent domain could still have gone through it to make a better sewer. So it's just that you can't develop it.
I agree, but at the same point, the whole idea is because in the past, if a piece of property is outside of the growth boundary and it's in the county and somebody wants it to be annexed, it has to go through both municipalities, right? And if this is agreed upon, then it's almost understood that both municipalities have already signed on to it, and it's me against my neighbors. And I'd rather not do that.
Well, and through this agreement that's a part of this process, the interlocal agreement that we're going to talk about later, a plan of service will be reviewed by both bodies as well for annexations. The only caveat is if they're contiguous. So but making those slight changes, they can still vote with the idea that those there's very small to make, as you've seen, and so we can certainly take that under consideration. Let me get the big one, sir.
This is the growth boundary. This is Johnston Woods. This is Bendabout. This is Bendabout. This is Bendabout. This is Bendabout. That is not. Okay. So right now the city limit, because that's off a little bit. That should be blue because that is Tommy Newman's, and that is part of the development that Tommy has already got passed by the municipality. So that our line is there. All this would be, and it could possibly fall under the scenarios that I gave. And so you have Johnston Woods too. Although Johnston Woods topography does not lend itself well to downhill sewer lines. So, but I don't want to speak for Mr. Rufus, but if they wish to be taken out, it might be a good time to do it.
They're actively looking for sewer connection.
Okay. On one section.
That's correct.
Yeah, right on the north edge. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right.
That's right.
Thank you. Would you make that amendment to the map?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chairman Mullinax, and thank you, committee members. Put my name down.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, Mr. Bentley. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Okay, if there's no others that would like to speak, then we'll move on to item B, which is the annexation agreement between Bradley County and the city of Cleveland. Everybody's got a copy of that. That was presented it, Cindy, it was never changed. Nothing was ever modified since you read it to us.
Well, no, that's not
Changes.
true.
Okay,
yeah.
there has been some modifications.
There was an addition done regarding annexation of roads by the city of Cleveland, or streets by the city of Cleveland, that addresses how and when we annex roads through the annexation process and spells out exactly the criteria for doing that under those conditions. So if there was an uncontiguous annexation, the entire road from the primary city to that piece would be annexed under that scenario. There's another one that discusses if the city has an annexation in a development that's on a county road and it's in excess of 1,000 linear feet, then we take that road, even if we're not, it's where the segment where the entrance to the development would be. So it's kind of draws out a scenario that Chairman Cry mentioned at our previous meeting. The annexation of roads through the annexation process. This spells out exactly how that works, covers the issues that, and it's something that the city over the past 2.5, 3 years, in my time, in the position I'm in now, has primarily done is annex the streets when we annex the property. Freewell Road is a good example. We annexed a piece of property on Freewell Road. We extended our city limits along the corridor of Freewell Road, almost 1.5 miles, I think, between where the city was. And so this lays that out. That is the only addition to the document since it was originally presented before by Ms. Slater.
Okay, Ms. Slater?
So the changes that Rob is talking about are on page 3 under section 5.
Yes, ma'am.
If you have not had time to read that. And he is correct. It talks about annexation of the streets, both where a non-contiguous annexation is requested and contiguous. The one question that I do have is, will you go back and take the roads for the annexations that have already taken place that you have not taken to date?
I think they're in the process of reviewing some of those. Now, I can't speak for the city council and how, that would go, but I can think of, trying to think of which ones. There's 2 that I could think of offhand. Highway 60, of course, we did that one. There's one there at Dry Valley. And then I believe Menace Road was referenced. And so I'd say that those are definitely under consideration. I don't know if, this doesn't go back in time and say we have to do it
Correct.
retro. I
Correct.
don't know that we could do that, but it doesn't mean that we're not doing that anyway. And I do think it's under discussion, but I don't want to speak out of turn as, but it's something we've been discussing. I do know that.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we'd have to look at the specifics and details of each one of those before we could really make any kind of decision on that.
But the likelihood, and with the city being the primary financer of the MPO, we spend a lot of money on infrastructure regionally anyway, so it seems like something.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Slater, I would say that because it does not spell it out in this agreement, that it would be dangerous or unwise for us to
Say yes or no.
hope that we could go back and do this. I think what probably needs to take place, I concur with Vice Mayor, each one probably needs to be requested in a systematic way from the county to the city so that we can actually know the pins,
Mhm.
the exact locations. I would also feel, I don't think it's fair to you all for us to just say, sure, we'll go back and fix it.
Correct.
I think it needs to be done very methodically.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, would
Yeah.
it be fair to ask, and I agree, I think each one should be looked at case by case. At least one of them has been requested already. That's the Menace Road request. But would it be fair to ask that any previous roads under consideration be held up to this same litmus test that we're agreeing to moving forward? No, what I'm saying is if you're going to look back at retroactive annexations that have taken place, could you evaluate the roads based on this set of criteria to determine whether or not it makes sense? In other words, if you're agreeing to do it moving forward under this criteria, would it not, could we respectfully ask that you review previous, and I agree, I don't know that we're talking about a lot of roads, one, maybe two at the most. One of them is under official request already, and Mr. Fivas, without getting anywhere close to an answer, left us, I think, with the hope that that's going to be considered and probably approved at some point. So I guess that would be my request, would be that, you know, if you're willing, if you're willing to look at past annexations, could it not just be based on these same criteria that we are hopefully going to agree on moving forward?
Okay, thank you. I guess my comment, and then I'll defer to Mr. Cry. The way this thing is written, the way I see it, it's basically moving forward. You all have gotten into this discussion that I'm not familiar with, of looking backwards, and that may be appropriate, but the way it's written now, you know, if it's approved, it would be from here on out, it would be,
Correct.
is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay,
I
Mr.
think just, this is an off-the-cuff request. Hey, by the way,
Sure.
you know, there's two roads we'd like to look at.
Mr. Cry?
Yes, thank you. There's another road that exists that needs to be looked at. It's Paso, Fish Creek Market, turn right at the traffic light, go to the top of the hill. That subdivision was annexed by the city as being contiguous, so the county had nothing to do with it being annexed. We weren't contacted, but the only thoroughfare from that subdivision to North Lee is Tasso Road. And I don't recall the city of Cleveland annexing it or agreeing, or we both mutually agree to a maintenance plan. So, I'm gonna discuss when we get down to the vote on some other comments here, but that needs to be looked at. And, we could have brought that out. That road goes back originally decades and decades, an old farm road with horses and mules
Yes.
pulling wagons. And you go, there's no shoulder on the road. You leave the road and you go into a tree. There's trees all the way down through there. It's crooked, and it needs to be addressed, or somebody is definitely going to get hurt on that road. And they've just started building in the subdivision, but I'll drop that one and wait later.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to muddy the waters too much, but for the sake of this item on the agenda, I'd like to make a motion that we approve it
Okay,
as written.
Adams made a motion to approve as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
And now I guess we can discuss it like we have been.
Yeah, if you would like to discuss it some more.
Yeah. I will.
Okay, I know Mr. Cry would. Okay. Go ahead, Tom.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the diligent work and consideration of this committee in identifying and clearing the way forward. Thank you to the Cleveland City Manager and staff for confirming that the proposed boundary meets the statutory requirements of providing for 20 years of growth. I recognize the importance of the proposed annexation interlocal agreement, which ensures both municipalities commit to refraining from annexation by referendum of properties outside their growth boundaries for the next 20 years. Last week, I affirmed my support for a 20-year growth boundary as required by statute and confirmed my openness to a longer-term boundary if key elements are addressed within the agreement and plan of service. In that spirit, I offer a substitute motion to add to the existing motion that we have to amend Section 2A and Section 2B of the proposed annexation interlocal agreement by striking outside the urban growth boundary from both sections. Furthermore, I move to enter into plan of services agreements for all annexations, incorporating detailed fire protection plans and adding a new section to address the maintenance of county roads and bridges that serve as primary access routes to the annexed areas. I'll make that as a substitute motion.
Could you repeat that motion, please? On section 2A and B, right?
Right.
Okay.
Let me find it here. I don't make a mistake. I offer a substitute motion to amend Section 2A and Section 2B of the proposed annexation interlocal agreement by striking outside its urban growth boundary from both sections. Furthermore, I move to enter into plan of services agreements for all annexations, incorporating detailed fire protection plans and adding a new section to address the maintenance of county roads and bridges that serve as primary access routes to the annexed areas.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Cry.
Yes,
Chairman Cry, on section 2A and 2B, where you want to strike outside its urban growth boundary, help me understand that, what that change,
Section 2.
2A and 2B, striking outside its urban growth boundary, because it would then read, Cleveland hereby agrees that during the term of this agreement, Cleveland shall not take any action to annex any property by referendum pursuant to TCA code.
That's the exact way I intended it to read. We would then not have a Tasso Road problem, which is wearing my phone out, where we don't have shoulders on a road that's got curves and trees and a 35-mile-an-hour speed zone that's not adhered to by very many people.
But I guess I'm still unclear then. The referendum, the annexation by referendum only takes place.
This wasn't a referendum.
Well, I'm talking about the section A, 2A, referring to referendum, to annexation of property by referendum. That only is allowed and only takes place if a property is outside the urban growth boundary. It doesn't happen for properties inside the growth boundary. So by leaving outside its urban growth boundary in, that is what has the effect that you've requested, which is that outside the urban growth boundary, there will not ever be, at least for the terms of this agreement, an annexation by referendum, which I think is what I mean, that's a win in terms of what the county has been asking for.
I'll leave my motion, substitute motion as it is.
Okay.
We can work it out because I think there's reason to be concerned, and it's evident that the county is not consulted on, and legally so, not consulted on contingent annexation. And I understand that that's not required, but we've got quite a dilemma.
The second part of your substitute motion is basically asking for a section to be placed requesting interlocal agreements on all annexations? Is that correct? Is that the
That's
simplest
correct.
way to, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Could you split the two by chance?
Everything's open for negotiation. I don't have any intention of splitting it myself, no.
Well, I mean, I'd ask you to split it because I'm not in favor of the first part, but I would support the second part.
I like the way it is myself.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion. So do I have a motion to accept the substitute motion? Do I have you're making the motion, do I have okay, Tom's making the motion, do we have a second? Okay, there is no second. So we're back to the original. I would like to just discuss with the committee, just for my information. We were charged with putting together what I think has developed into hopefully a good plan that can be approved regarding the urban growth boundary. And now, before us is this other resolution, that, I mean, I would think is an agreement between the city and the county, not
And-
necessarily the committee here.
And
I don't
Charleston.
mind voting on it, but,
And Charleston.
and Charleston, excuse me, and Charleston. So there probably are paths for it to be tweaked if necessary, apart from this committee.
Correct.
Can I ask a clarifying
Yes.
question? Because I've been asked this. Does the city hold the position that for property inside the growth boundary, they can still elect to annex by referendum?
No, I don't believe that that's what it's designed for. The use of it was outside the urban growth boundary because it states that you can do it regardless of a outside entity's standard, if that makes sense. So it could have been in a no-growth zone in the county, is what it specified, but it talks about the urban growth boundary and being outside of that. So
Okay, so let me maybe ask this a different way. Does the city believe that, well, I guess I'm gonna ask it the same way. Does the city believe that they can annex by referendum inside the growth boundary?
I don't think we would need to.
do I believe that we can?
Yes.
I believe this agreement is agreeing that we will not.
Well, it does not if you believe you can annex inside the growth boundary. I'm asking because this is a question we've been asked and will get asked at the county commission level. There's a belief among some that the city feels that they can annex within the growth boundary. Cindy, you correct me if I'm wrong. So at that point, that does make Chairman Cry's substitute motion relevant. By taking that out, that would then mean that you're agreeing to no annexations by referendum inside or outside the growth boundary. So, Mr. Cry, depending on the answer to this question, I may or may not go back to
I'm
supporting
going to
your
defer to
motion.
staff, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Robert, doesn't the DCA code, the annexation by referendum, isn't it triggered by outside the growth boundary?
It's not, it was written before urban growth boundaries. Its use in Tennessee since the urban growth boundary has been outside the urban growth boundary. In all the places I'm familiar with, but I believe it is not specific to it, but it does reference that it can be outside the urban growth boundary or is outside the urban growth boundary, regardless of how the property there is coded. So in the county, it could have been rural. There is a specific section that was added on that. So I think that's what you're alluding to, which is what I read as being outside the urban growth boundary. That is the tool for annexation.
Okay,
But even if it was inside the urban growth boundary and you tried to do the referendum, it would have to go back and have an interlocal agreement, which is the same thing
Because it's inside, yeah.
because it's inside. If as long as it's inside, you have to go back and do the interlocal agreement with the county to who's going to do the roads.
I would defer to, these kind of questions, and I think the comment was correct. The city council and the county commission, the city council for the city of or the city commission for the city of Charleston, these are the people that have to answer this question. I don't think it's our duty to necessarily put that upon them in this body. Our job, as was stated, was to prepare the urban growth boundary, which we spent 6 months doing. We've added the agreement because I thought an endorsement by this body of the fact that we're agreeing to what was asked for originally was a benefit. And now we're moving that goalpost again. And that's not what this body is designed for.
Mr. Chairman,
If these questions,
no, go ahead.
if these questions would like to be asked, they need to be asked to the legislative body of the particular entity.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to inquire. We were in session, Vice Mayor. I'd say parliamentary procedure. I have a question. I believe this document was drafted by the county attorney and the county mayor and presented to us. Do you agree with these terms? I'm asking it like Jeopardy in the form of a question.
That is my knowledge as well, with the addition of the road section that I added this morning.
Mr. Chairman, let's make this easy. It's my belief and understanding that annexation by referendum can only happen outside the growth boundary, which is why earlier I did not understand Mr. Kry's first part of his motion. Okay, if there is a question about when and where an annexation by referendum can take place, can we not just, and I'll make the substitute motion to strike those two lines. If you're agreeing, if everybody agrees that we're only talking about outside the growth boundary, then what's the harm in striking that to say across the board?
My question is, well, like some of us have nothing to do with city agreement. So why is it being brought up in here? All we're doing is talking about the map to present to the cities. It really needs to go to the city council, the county commission, and the city of Charleston. I mean, this body here is only here to talk about the map. I'm not disagreeing that it should be brought up. I'm just saying, like, we have no authority to answer any of these questions or strike through any agreement. All we're here to do, or like, I'm just saying me and Tim, because we're no part of the government.
I think we do, though. I mean, we are part of the government. We were appointed as a committee operating on behalf of the government. So to Robert's point, you know, sure, we can punt on this and just say, and have no opinion on it and just let it go to the municipalities and the county commission.
Well,
But I do think that it's helpful, like the map, for us to make a recommendation as a committee. It gives footing to both municipalities and the county commission when it comes time to discuss and vote. So I'm in favor of taking an opinion as a committee and voting to pass some form of this. Is it an additional step than what we've had to do before?
I
Yes.
just don't want to create unintended consequences, which I think we're not taking time to think through, and we don't know. You know, this was reviewed and put together by an attorney who understood the law and read the law. I think making decisions and adjusting it without, I mean, this is on the fly.
Well, the reason I said let's make it easy is we can kick it, and maybe it gets voted on tonight, maybe it doesn't. But we're on a deadline to get something to these municipalities.
That's correct.
To me, by striking those two lines, that does nothing to further restrict the agreement and what the city has already agreed to in writing, in my opinion. By striking that, it does nothing more to restrict.
My comment is this, and certainly I'm not an attorney, but it is a legal instrument that has been prepared by one. It seems to me we're 98% there with their consultation and the leadership from both city and county. I think you can get to the 100% pretty quickly and easily, going through the right legal counsel to fix what you're suggesting, Adam. And it just sounds like it's easy and doable, but the right thing to do is let the people that prepared it hear Mr. Kry's concerns and make the tweaks and let them do it. to me, it's real close except for that.
Yeah.
And I agree, I'm pretty good on water and sewer, but, if we tweak a few words that they would disagree with, I would just soon, I mean, it's gonna go to the
This has
city and
been reviewed
county
and vetted
for
by
them to
both
do, and
attorneys.
let it get fine tuned and then brought to them for their approval.
Well,
We can, I'm
I
good to
agree- I
go
agree
with it
you.
like it is.
I'm prepared to vote exactly as it's written, personally.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking long-term, like I said at the last meeting, this is designed to help us get at least 8 votes on the county commission. And the 2 biggest concerns from commissioners have been roads, which are addressed, and 0 future annexations by referendum. And so if there is still a question about whether or not the city can do annexation by referendum, that will be a determining factor for some. I don't know how many. It may not be enough to matter. But again, personally, I'll vote yes right now on the way it's written.
And the city
I
council
am
will-
thinking from a strategic standpoint of what the questions are going to be, what the discussions are going to be, and what could be a roadblock moving forward. In
And
my
think-
opinion,
I think
which
that
is
is
not a legal
great,
opinion.
I think that is a great way to address it to the legislative bodies, of which we are not one. I'm going to defer to my colleague, Mr. Workman. I'm not quite sure why this body, who was only charged to bring forward a map, is even contemplating an annexation agreement signed by 3 mayors, one of which is not here tonight. I think this annexation agreement is a presentation of we are willing to do what it takes to work this out going forward. But I think this is a discussion between the Cleveland City Council, the Council of Charleston, and the Commission of Bradley County to fine tune or delete or not delete sentences. I'm not sure why there was even a vote or an agenda for this to be considered by this body. That's just my personal opinion. This is an agreement between 3 mayors, and I think we're close to the chairman's point.
Yeah,
Before
I'm
our
just saying-
mayor can sign any document, it has to be, he has to be authorized by 14 county commissioners. So it is relevant. Again, we can vote on it right now. I made the motion to vote on it as is. I stand by that motion. I just know we're on a deadline, and I would hate for, if we could make what in my opinion is a small change tonight, to keep from a further delay and a request from the county commission, back and forth, lawyers, council meetings, and just a delay in the timeline.
Mr.
So-
Chairman, there's a motion on the floor. I call for the question.
Okay, I have one comment. Would there be, or one question, would there be an opportunity going forward to get this clarified before it goes to both bodies?
100%.
And I'm hearing that's a yes. So I think it can be brought to a final form as you suggested, and then presented in the form that I think we're wanting. There's enough time to make that happen. So we've got,
As presented or amended.
we'll go ahead and,
That's by motion.
yeah.
Yeah, I've already made the motion to approve as written.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead with that vote. And let's just do this by voice vote. So I'll just go
Mr.
down.
Chairman, was there a second to that motion?
Yes.
Ken did.
You seconded. Okay.
As
So
written. As written.
as written. So we're voting on it as written. And you know, just, yes. Okay. We'll start off with this. Adam Lewis,
Yes.
Linda Cash not here. David Lattimore.
Yes.
Ken Webb.
Yes.
Tom Cry.
No,
Jonathan Job.
Yes.
Cameron Brooks.
Yes.
Cindy Slater.
Yes.
Tim Lawson.
Yes.
Ryan Workman.
I'm abstaining.
And David's not here. I guess I get a vote. That would be yes. Okay. So, our next item is the urban growth boundary. Okay, we'll have discussion in a minute, but do I have a motion to accept the revisions and I think everyone has in front of them the final amended version, if you had a chance to look at it, and the large map there. Do I have a motion to accept the,
Is this including the changes that Matt just
The
requested?
Bend-about amendment?
This does not.
yes, that's right.
And that can be the motion pending,
Okay,
if that's y'all's, path. It can be pending, the map being updated, but
and you understand
I do.
what needs to be done?
100%.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the 2025 urban growth boundary map with the changes that were requested from Mr. Bentley.
okay. Thank you. Do I have a second? Okay, Mayor Lattimore. Okay, do we have any further discussion on this? I hear no discussion. Let's go with a voice vote. We'll start with Adam Lewis.
Yes.
David Lattimore. Yes. Ken Webb.
Yes.
Craig Mullinax, yes. Tom Cry.
Yes.
Jonathan Job.
Yes.
Kevin Brooks. Cindy Slater.
Yes.
Tim Lawson.
Yes.
And Brian Workman.
Yes.
All right. That passes. There are no staff reports. No committee. Any other comments, any other questions regarding the process?
I'll just say, thank you to the County Mayor Davis for putting this team together, and thank you all for your time. I appreciate it. I know it's been a lot, so I just want to say thanks.
And I want to concur. I want to thank everybody for what we've done and getting there. And hopefully we can refine the local agreement and get this thing passed. We'll see how that goes. I do have a question regarding the way this is presented to both bodies. You may need to talk to council about drafting what we just approved in a legal document that they can sign off on.
There'll be a resolution attached to the map.
Okay.
Is the way it's done, and so the map will be presented with the resolution for each individual legislative body. Yes. Yes, structured the way the three different do. That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
There'll be three individual resolutions based on the type of government system they've got and requirements therein.
So going forward, as of now, we are complete, finished, no other scheduled meetings, correct?
At this time, that is correct, and hopefully
It-
for 20 years.
So there's
Okay.
no scheduled meetings for us, but if any of the three bodies were to come back and ask for a revision, this body would be called back to look at those revisions
is
to then
correct.
pass them. Okay.
That
So
is
we are on a hold. We're not
Not on hold,
dismissed.
you're not dismissed yet.
Yeah.
Sequestered, that's right.
Okay, very good.
The comment was made that we were here to vote on the outline or the map. I was not told anything of that nature by the mayor of Bradley County, neither was I given any instruction. So what you see is Tom Cry. I assume that everything I've said is part of the procedure that this committee has done. The map being part of it, you notice I had no trouble with the map. I have trouble with fireplaces being across the street from city residents. I have trouble with roads that don't have shoulders and trees. I have trouble with that. So do the citizens of Bradley County. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.